A man stands in a valley of shattered limestone and charred cedar. The year is somewhere around 400 BC, and he is looking at the wreckage of Jerusalem, stated, "At the precise moments," he slows the narrative down to a crawl, you start to see something the traditional reading completely misses. The nation will always burn. So the author elevates the Levites. When King Abijah faces a brutal ambush, he does not rally his generals. He points to his priests blowing the silver trumpets, and the enemy lines shatter. When King Hezekiah cleanses the land, he does not start with the economy. He starts by hauling the filth out of the sanctuary and paying the choir their wages. When King Jehoshaphat marches out against a massive coalition of Moabite and Ammonite armies, he does not put his heavy infantry on the front line. He puts the singers on the front line. The defense of Jerusalem is not a standing army. It is a singing choir. The chronicler is telling the terrified, traumatized people rebuilding their lives in the rubble. You do not need a king to survive. You do not need political sovereignty to be the people of God. As long as the wood is on the fire, as long as the blood is on the altar, as long as the song rises from the courtyard, the kingdom holds. Worship is not a religious accessory to the state. It is the state. The kings are merely evaluated by how well they protect that sacred space. When they protect the altar, God protects the borders. When they pollute the altar, the borders collapse. It is an airtight theological system. The rules are clear. The mechanism is flawless. 2 Chronicles is not a history of a fallen kingdom. It is the blueprint for a kingdom that cannot be destroyed. But then the chronicler has to write about a man named Manasseh, and the entire system breaks. The ink on the scroll of Kings issues a final verdict. Manasseh is the worst. He reigns for 55 years. He rebuilds the pagan high places. He bows down to the stars. He burns his own sons in the valley of Hinnom. He drags a carved idol directly into the Holy of Holies. He fills the streets of Jerusalem with innocent blood. In the Book of Kings, his reign is the fatal blow. It is the absolute point of no return. The wrath of God is locked in. The destruction of Jerusalem is permanently guaranteed. The Book of Kings offers no hope. The chronicler agrees with the crimes. He records the exact same atrocities. And according to his airtight theology of the altar, the punishment must be swift. It must be devastating. The Assyrian army arrives. They breach the walls. They drag the king out. They shove an iron hook through his nose. They bind his wrists with heavy bronze shackles. They haul him away to the dungeons of Babylon. The system works. The math is perfect. The idolater is exiled. But then the chronicler writes a scene that the Book of Kings leaves out entirely. He shatters the formula. He rewrites the boundaries of grace. The chronicler pulls back the curtain on the Babylonian cell. He shows us a king sitting in total darkness. The bronze chains bite into his skin. To understand what this book is actually doing, you have to understand the existential terror of the people reading it. His face bleeds from the iron ring. He is the most wicked man in the history of Judah. He deserves to rot in that hole. He deserves to be erased from the lineage of David. But in the dark, he prays, and God listens. God opens the dungeon. God brings him back to Jerusalem. God restores the worst king in history to his throne. The exiles reading this text are stunned. They are sitting in the exact same Babylonian geography. They are living under the exact same consequence of sin. They think God is done with them. They think their treason is too deep. The chronicler is sending a direct, calculated message to a broken people. The grace of God does not stop at the borders of Israel. The presence of God reaches all the way into the Babylonian dirt. The return of Manasseh is not a crack in the theological system. It is the anchor for a desperate people. If Manasseh can be brought back from Babylon, anyone can. If the man who polluted the Holy of Holies can find grace in a foreign prison, then the exile is not a locked door. It is a furnace of transformation. But to understand how this impossible reversal actually happens, you have to look at exactly what Manasseh did in the dark. The Babylonians did not just burn a city. They broke a theology. For 4 centuries, the Israelites believed a specific promise. The English text simply says he humbled himself. But the ancient Hebrew verb describes a violent, physical breaking. Picture the dungeon in Babylon. 2 Chronicles, chapter 33, verse 12. The most wicked king of Judah is chained to a damp stone wall, the metallic taste of his own blood still sharp in his mouth. The air is thick with the smell of mold and human waste. The text tells us that in his agonizing distress, he entreated the Lord his God and humbled himself greatly before the God of his fathers. We read the word humbled in English, and we project our modern, sanitized definition onto the text. We picture a polite religious posture. We picture a man simply bowing his head, lowering his voice, perhaps feeling a gentle wave of internal remorse for his past mistakes. But the word the chronicler writes on the scroll is the Hebrew kana. It appears 36 times in the Old Testament, and its primary context is military, not emotional. The root meaning of kana is to bend the knee, to be physically subdued, to be brought down by crushing force. When the ancient Israelite armies conquer a territory, the text repeatedly says the land was kana subdued. When a foreign king is thrown into the dirt and a victor's boot is placed firmly on his neck, he is kana. They believed that as long as a son of David sat on the throne, they were safe. It is a violent, structural folding. When Manasseh sits in the dark and is kana, he is not adjusting his attitude, his pride, his royal autonomy, his lifelong reliance on demonic alliances and political terror. All of it is being snapped in half by the weight of the bronze shackles. He is a conquered enemy, finally dropping his sword. That root meaning changes everything about how we understand this scene. Humility is not a gentle emotion you generate. It is the absolute surrender of your sovereignty. The chronicler is showing the returning exiles exactly what is required to survive the judgment of God. It is not enough to simply feel bad about the blackened rubble of Jerusalem. You have to let the rubble break your reliance on yourself. You have to allow your own kingdom to be subdued so the actual king can take over. God does not restore Manasseh because he feels sorry for a crying man in a cell. God restores Manasseh because the king finally recognizes his own bankruptcy. The bronze chains were not a random punishment. They were a necessary pressure. When the king is finally kana, the heavy iron doors open. God brings him back to Jerusalem. And Manasseh does exactly what a subdued, broken king should do. He hauls the heavy carved idols out of the temple. He rebuilds the stone altar. He orders the entire nation to serve the Lord. The worst monarch in history becomes the ultimate proof of concept. They believed the temple was a magical talisman, an impenetrable fortress of divine presence that no foreign army could ever breach, for the chronicler's theology. But this story of radical, impossible grace introduces a haunting reality for the traumatized generation reading this scroll. Back in the ruins of Jerusalem, they are back in the land. They are rebuilding the altar. They are learning to live kana. But as they look at the empty throne room, they realize something is missing. The altar is smoking. The priests are singing. The limestone walls are finally rising from the ash. But the throne is empty. The returning exiles have their temple back. But they do not have their kingdom. There is no son of David wearing a golden crown. There is no royal chariot rolling through the stone streets. There are no Israelite generals drawing up battle plans. There is only a Persian governor. Silver coins drop into foreign chests. Black ink dries on foreign tax records. The heavy linen robes of Persian guards brush against the gates of the holy city. They are home, but they are not free. The chronicler knows this. He knows the political monarchy is dead. He knows his readers are living as vassals in their own promised land. And this is where his editorial genius reaches its absolute peak. Look at how he ends the entire narrative. The Book of Kings ends with a lingering political hope. Then the unthinkable happens. King Zedekiah is captured. His sons are slaughtered in front of him. His eyes are gouged out. It shows the exiled King Jehoiachin, released from a Babylonian dungeon. It shows him eating at the table of the emperor. It is a small spark of royal restoration, a hint that the political dynasty might one day return to power. But the chronicler cuts that scene completely. He ends his massive history with a decree from a completely different king, Cyrus the Great, a Persian emperor, a pagan warlord. Cyrus issues a decree. He tells the Jews to go home. He tells them to build a house for God in Jerusalem. Whoever is among you, of all his people, may the Lord his God be with him. Let him go up. And then the scroll abruptly stops. The last word of the traditional Hebrew Bible, because Chronicles is the final book in the ancient Jewish ordering of the Scriptures, is not a triumphant image of a Davidic king reigning on a throne. It is a command to go up and worship. The author is making a staggering theological claim. He is redefining the entire concept of Israel's identity. The promise made to David was not a geopolitical guarantee. It was a priestly vocation. The physical throne, the cedar palace, the standing army that was just the scaffolding. The scaffolding caught fire. The scaffolding collapsed under the weight of Babylonian iron. But the actual building survived. The presence of God does not require a political sovereign to protect it. He is dragged away in heavy bronze chains. The gold of the sanctuary is melted down and carried off. It only requires a broken Kana people to host it. This changes how the exiles must read their own history. It changes how they must view their current subjugation. They are not a failed state waiting for a military revolution. They are a purified priesthood called to keep the fire burning in the dark. But as they stand in the shadow of this new, smaller temple, the echoes of the chronicler's history begin to point toward a future they cannot yet see. A king builds a temple without his father's blood, and the glory of God descends in a cloud. A king faces a brutal ambush, and the silver trumpets shatter the enemy line. A king empties his treasury for foreign doctors, and his diseased feet never walk the path to the altar again. A king sends a singing choir to the front lines of a war, and a massive coalition of armies collapses in the desert. A king hauls the filth out of the sanctuary, and a fractured nation breathes again. A wicked king bends, his knee in the dark of a Babylonian dungeon, and the heavy bronze doors swing open. A pagan emperor. The holy vessels are packed into foreign wagons. The smoke of the burning cedar roof fills the sky for days. Issues a decree from a foreign throne, and a traumatized people pack their bags to go worship. Same altar, same presence, same God. But maybe the part that stays with me most is the cold stone floor of that Babylonian cell. A king chained in the dark, bleeding from an iron hook in his nose, realizing that all his political alliances and carved idols meant absolutely nothing. He was stripped of everything that made him a monarch. He was Kana crushed under the weight of his own rebellion. And it was exactly there, at the absolute bottom of his autonomy, that the God of his fathers finally heard him. If you are in a season where the scaffolding of your life has collapsed, if the things you relied on for security, your career, your reputation, your carefully constructed alliances have caught fire and burned to the ground, you do not need to frantically hire foreign doctors or forge new strategies to save your kingdom. You just need to daresh. You need to wear a groove in the floor walking back to the altar. They lose the crown. They lose the land. They lose the temple. For 70 years in exile, they sit by the rivers of Babylon. Rubble of your life is not a permanent grave. It is a cleared foundation. Because the God of the Chronicles does not require you to hold earthly power to hold his presence. And may the God, who meets kings in the darkest dungeons, walk with you through the ash of your own fallen empires, and will show you that what you thought was an exile was actually just an invitation to worship. The dust of Babylonian destruction has settled. But the physical scars are everywhere. He sees the blackened foundations of Solomon's temple and asks a terrifying question. Is God dead? Or did he just leave us? Now, a remnant has returned. They are standing in the rubble, trying to figure out how to be the people of God when everything that defined the people of God has been violently stripped away. They need a new way to understand their past so they can survive their future. So the author of Chronicles begins to write. He gathers the ancient scrolls, the royal records, the prophetic texts, but he does not just copy them. He reshapes them. He weaves a narrative that shifts the entire center of gravity, away from the political throne and places it squarely on the stone altar. But to do this, to reconstruct this theology from the ashes, he has to make a bold editorial decision. He has to take the greatest king Israel ever had and completely erase his darkest moment. We approach ancient texts with a modern, investigative mentality. We expect the unvarnished truth, the raw footage, the unedited transcript examined under the sterile fluorescent light of a courtroom. We demand journalistic objectivity. So when a modern reader compares the historical accounts in the Book of Kings to the narratives in 2 Chronicles, the immediate reaction is deep suspicion. He feels the cold wind blowing through gaps where the massive stone walls used to stand. He hears the silence where the Levitical choirs used to sing. The Book of Kings gives you the dirt. It gives you the gritty, catastrophic reality of the human monarchy. It shows you King Solomon's 700 wives. It details the foreign altars he built for Chemosh and Molech on the Mount of Olives, the heavy smell of unauthorized sacrifices drifting over the city. It shows you a kingdom tearing itself apart in a bitter civil war, fractured by a young king's arrogance and crushing tax policies. But roll open the heavy parchment of 2 Chronicles. The darkness vanishes. In this account, Solomon's idolatry is completely absent. His catastrophic moral failures are scrubbed from the record. The bitter rebellion of the northern tribes is barely a footnote. Secular historians look at this sweeping redaction and immediately call it religious propaganda. They assume the author is acting like a desperate public relations manager, sanitizing the royal resume to protect the brand of a fallen dynasty for a fragile audience. But that assumes the ancient readers did not already know the truth. The exiles returning from Babylon already had the Book of Kings. They knew the royal sins intimately. They were currently standing in the physical, ash-covered, consequence of those very sins. Their grandfathers had been slaughtered because of Solomon's idolatry. They did not need another reminder of how thoroughly their political leaders had failed them. The chronicler is not trying to hide the past. He is trying to map the future. By omitting the moral failures of Israel's, he picks up a pen. He is not writing a history book. He is not composing a dusty record for an ancient archive. Foundational kings. He is not lying about history. He is elevating typology. He is sketching an idealized blueprint of what the Davidic kingship was always supposed to be, not a political military force, but a priestly conduit. In 2 Chronicles, Solomon is portrayed almost exclusively as the temple builder. He is the man who organizes the choirs, who measures the gold overlays, who facilitates the literal presence of God descending on earth in a cloud of thick glory. The author is deliberately separating the office of the king from the flawed men who held it. He wants the returning exiles to see that the true center of their universe was never the throne room. It was always the altar. But this massive editorial shift forces the post-exilic generation to face a terrifying reality about their own suffering. If the failure of the human kings is no longer the focal point of their history, then they have to confront the real reason their city was burned to the ground. The rubble is not a political consequence. It is a spiritual verdict. A remnant of Judah packs their lives into woven baskets. They leave the irrigation canals of Babylon. They walk across 1,000 miles of burning sand. The dry Persian wind cracks their lips. They carry the looted silver cups. They carry the heavy gold basins. They return to the mountain. They stand where the Holy of Holies used to be. He is writing a survival manual for a traumatized people. Every king dies. Every empire falls. Every physical monument is eventually reduced to ash and memory. They heave massive limestone blocks out of the ash. They mix mortar with calloused hands. Their fingers bleed on the iron chisels. Their muscles burn in the midday sun. They wipe the sting of sweat from their eyes. They are rebuilding a nation from scratch, but they are terrified. The trauma of the Babylonian siege is still echoing in their bones. They need to know exactly how their ancestors lost it all, so they never repeat the tragedy. The author of Chronicles gives them their answer. He builds a relentless, rapid-fire pattern. He cycles through the kings of Judah, one by one, and evaluates them on a completely different scale than the Book of Kings did. Rehoboam abandons the law. Egyptian chariots roll in. The gold is plundered. Abijah cries out to heaven. An ambush is broken. Enemy armies shatter. Asa smashes the foreign altars. The army rests. The land breathes in peace. Jehoshaphat sends teachers into the villages. The fear of the Lord falls on the surrounding nations. No weapons are drawn. Every reign is a mirror. Every generation is a test. He is showing the exiles that the defense of Jerusalem was never about high walls. It was never about bronze shields or iron-tipped spears. It was always about a spiritual trajectory. The metric of a king is not political stability. It is posture. Same cycle again and again. Most people read the book of 2 Chronicles and assume it is just a redundant recap. When a king turns toward the altar, the kingdom thrives. When a king turns away, the kingdom fractures. The consequences are immediate. The judgment is swift. The physical world bends entirely to the spiritual reality. It is a simple formula. But human hearts are not simple, even the best kings. The ones who start with fierce devotion and radical trust have a terrifying tendency to hollow out from the inside over time. They grow comfortable. They grow strategic. They stop relying on the altar and start relying on their own alliances, their own treasuries, their own logic. And to explain exactly how this fatal shift happens, the chronicler zooms in on the end of King Asa's life. He stops the rapid timeline. He freezes the frame. He points to a single, devastating detail about a disease in the king's feet. And hiding inside that medical footnote is a Hebrew verb that holds the entire theology of the book together. Look at 2 Chronicles chapter 16, verse 12. The text tells us that in the 39th year of his reign, King Asa is diseased in his feet. You can picture the aging monarch confined to his heavy wooden bed. The sharp smell of bitter poultices and burning sage filling the royal chambers, as expensive foreign doctors try to alleviate his pain. The verse ends with a haunting epitaph. They think it is simply a repetition of the books of Samuel and Kings, a sanitized version of Israel's past. Yet, even in his disease, he did not seek the Lord, but sought the physicians. Most people read this and assume it is an ancient prohibition against medical science. They think the biblical text is demanding blind, passive faith over practical, earthly treatment. But the writer of Chronicles is not practicing ancient medicine. He is tracking spiritual treason. The word your Bible translates as seek is the Hebrew darash. It appears repeatedly throughout the Chronicles scroll, acting as the ultimate measuring stick for the heart of every single king. Its root meaning is intensely physical, and it is far more aggressive than the English translation implies. Darash does not mean to casually look around for something you misplaced. It means to tread. It means to wear a path into the dirt by walking to the same destination over and over again. It is the act of frequenting a specific place, of habitually turning toward a source of authority until a permanent groove is carved into the earth. If feeling the physical texture behind these English translations is shifting how you read your own Bible, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe, because every week we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So Asa stops treading the path to the altar. He stops seeking the divine presence that delivered him in his youth, with the ugly parts scrubbed out for a religious audience. And it does look like that at first glance. And he begins to wear a new path to human experts and political strategists. When a massive Syrian army threatened his borders a few years earlier, he didn't darash God. He emptied the gold out of the temple treasury to hire mercenaries. The foot disease is just a physical manifestation of a spiritual reality. The man who forgot how to walk toward God physically loses the ability to walk at all. His sin is not a reliance on medicine. It is the transfer of his ultimate trust. When the chronicler evaluates these kings, he does not care about their military tactics, their trade routes, or their economic policies. He only cares where they tread their paths. Did they darash the God of Israel? Or did they darash the Baals? And this singular relentless standard creates a massive theological problem for the returning exiles, reading this scroll. Because if Darash, a perfect, unbroken orientation toward God, is the only way to keep the kingdom safe, then every human king is eventually going to fail. Asa failed. Uzziah failed. Even the great reformer Josiah failed. If the survival of Jerusalem depends on a flawless human monarch pacing a path to the altar, the nation is simply waiting to burn again. The chronicler knows this better than anyone, and that is why the true protagonist of 2 Chronicles is not a king at all. But if you look closer at the scenes the author chooses to skip, at the specific architectural dimensions he obsesses over, the sun rises over the Mount of Olives. The king of Judah is still asleep in his cedar-paneled palace, but the true defense of the nation is already awake. You can hear the scrape of heavy bronze doors sliding open. You can smell the sharp, metallic scent of blood mixing with the sweet smoke of frankincense. You can feel the chill of the morning dew on the smooth limestone pavement as barefoot men carry heavy wood to a massive bronze grate. The priests are preparing the altar. The singers are tuning the stringed instruments. The Levites are taking their positions at the gates. In the Book of Kings, these men are background characters. They are extras on a political stage, occasionally called upon to bless a monarch or maintain a building. But here in the Book of 2 Chronicles, the camera angle shifts. The lens pulls away from the political intrigue of the throne room and locks entirely onto the courtyard. The true protagonist of this book is not a political dynasty. It is the priesthood. It is the unbroken, rhythmic machinery of worship. The chronicler wants the returning exiles to understand something foundational about power. Kings are fragile. Kings get diseased feet. Kings make terrible alliances. If the survival of the nation rests on the moral perfection of one man wearing a gold crown,